Welcome back. The international community is concerned about the controversial anti-social media bill at the Senate. Nigerians have been commenting on the action, criticizing the lawmakers for even considering it. Proponents of the bill say it is necessary to combat the spread of malicious falsehoods, but detractors argue that it would serve to curb free speech and target government critics. The International Press Institute's Nigerian National Committee, in a statement, praised President Muhammadu Buhari for having rebuffed the Senate's bid to lure him into an unwholesome anti-media dragnet, and it called on Nigeria's federal lawmakers to ensure that the bill does not become law. Well, Senate President Dr. Bukola Saraki has responded to the criticism of the bill by saying that the bill would not be passed in its current form and that the Senate would ensure that it did not infringe on Nigerians' freedom of expression. It would not also infringe on potential changes are expected to be made, but they're yet to be seen. IPI Director of Advocacy and Communications, Stephen Ellis, urged Nigerian lawmakers reviewing the bill to make sure that not only that it complies with free speech protections in the country's constitution, but that it also meets international standards on free expression. And we'll be discussing this later, but let's quickly move on to Somalia. Now, in its heyday, Mogadishu, the capital city, was known as the Athens of Africa, with its whitewashed colonial waterfront and balmy climate. This history is the inspiration for Somali author Nuruddin Farah's latest novel, Hiding in Plain Sight.
Somalia's capital city, Mogadishu, in its early prime days was known as the Athens of Africa, with its whitewashed colonial waterfront and balmy climate. This history is the inspiration for Somali author Nuruddin Farah's latest novel, Hiding in Plain Sight. Farah, one of Africa's best-known and most prolific writers, has been living in exile for the last 18 years. Like many of his previously written 11 novels, Hiding in Plain Sight is populated by Somali characters and hacks away at stereotypes about the Horn of Africa country.
This novel represents the secular past of Mogadishu. When Mogadishu was one of the greatest cosmopolitan cities in Africa in which you could live.
Much of Mogadishu's splendor vanished under a 2-decade storm of bullets and mortar shells. The country had no functioning government for years after warlords from rival clans ousted military dictator Mohammed Said Barre in 1991, plunging the country into conflict. Millions of Somalis fled and were displaced from their homes. Poverty and unemployment remain rife. After years of fighting, Somalia now has a relatively stable government, but the emergence of radical Islamist group Al-Shabaab in the early 2000s continues to threaten peace in the country. Analysts like writer Farah say the country's instability can also be blamed on foreign actors.
Not in the interest of anyone for Somalia to become peaceful. It's not in the interest of the Ugandan army, it's not in the interest of IGAD, it's not the interest of all those people who making money, minting the situation, making money out of Somali's misery.
Somalia is slowly recovering as life returns to normal. Lucrative ports like Kismayu in the country's south are now up and running. The central government wants to grow its ports and ease reliance on foreign aid, as well as generate more revenue to boost security efforts and fight Al-Shabaab militants. Women and children continue to bear the brunt of conflict in Somalia. The constant risk of getting shot or raped, the lack of education and health care, and practices like female genital mutilation make women's lives unbelievably hard. Somalia has a long way to go. Just 10% of its roads are paved, while 95% of the country's 10 million people have no electricity. But if its most famous author is to be believed, the Horn of Africa will be able to move past its history of war and violence.